It has the additional feature that I think it improves upon our current process for the election of chair. Right now, we do it usually the first meeting in January, and it's done sort of halfway through the meeting, and then the person who's running the meeting would change, and maybe they change seats, and there's more drama to that than is really necessary. So I think it makes a lot more sense just to elect the person, the chair, in December, and then they would serve starting January of the following year. And there would be some transition to that because there needs to be a transition. And so the exception is that we're electing the chair now, and then if we adopt this, then we would elect in December for the following year.
Yeah, thank you for that. I guess my big question is, I mean, these seem on the face of it to be good ideas for how we can proceed going forward. Just why does it need to be a resolution?
Well, I think it sort of reflects the majority of the commission's will on this, and I think it, obviously a resolution is something that could be rescinded at any time by the majority of the commission. So it's certainly not like a rulemaking, but I think it does really establish this term limit, and there would be an additional barrier to removing it. There would have to be a positive action of the committee of the commission to remove it.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Aguilera, do you have any questions, thoughts?
So thank you for proposing this. My initial reaction is why do we need to write this down? I think there are situations that can occur that are not contemplated by this resolution, and I'm concerned about this boxing us in. Commissions often need to have an acting chairman for whatever reason. I think this could complicate that. I also don't necessarily think that electing a chair in December is the best month to do it, because all of our terms end in December's, and so if we do it in December, we would be doing it without potentially a new commissioner who would be coming in. And so I think that's problematic. Overall, I think that this would bind us and any future commissioners. I agree with that, and I guess I'm not inclined to adopt this resolution, and I'd rather, especially because this is already written in our statute that we have to do this. I don't think it's that complicated that we need to establish a formal process like this.
Yeah, that's kind of my thought. There's only 3 of us, and so I think these are things we should be able to work out together. I don't like limiting flexibility just because I can't imagine what it is that we're going to need to be dealing with down the road. One thing I've learned in this year of being a commissioner is commissioners, don't last very long and they go away for many different reasons. So trying to create something rigid, you know, replacing collegiality with bureaucracy feels to me like more than needs to be done and has potential for unintended consequences. Despite the fact that I see the, you know, the value you said, I don't disagree with any of that. I agree that changing out whose chair is gonna be valuable over time. So I just don't want to limit myself when there's only three of us and we are here ostensibly because of, you know, professional, thoughtful people that I would really value. Let's have a conversation and fix the problem when it shows up. So creating a resolution kind of feels like a solution in search of a problem. And I always worry about unintended consequences there.
Well, I would be amenable to deleting the first 5 paragraphs of this, you know, the decretal portion of this, and retaining only the term limitation to 2 years, because that is really the heart of this. And, you know, so if there are concerns about this election procedure being overly restrictive, I'm happy to get rid of that. I think there's merit in instituting a term limit for consecutive service as chair. And, you know, I would prefer that be done as a resolution.
Thank you. Any other discussion or questions?
Well, I guess I would like to ask, you know, both of your thoughts on this. Do you think it would be acceptable for the same individual to serve as chair for 4, 5, or 6 years?
I personally can't see wanting to do that, but I totally think that situation can change. You know, you just don't know. There's only 3 of us, right? So like the situation that the rigidity of electing in December, we don't know, maybe in December. I mean, we weren't appointed until December 27th. So that would mean having an election without knowing who the new commissioner is. And what if the commissioner who is carrying over doesn't want the job? Then you've got this rigidity of you have to take it because this guy can't be there anymore. So again, that's something that I think I'd rather just have the flexibility to deal with it as when it occurs. And so I understand the logic of 2 years because that's when these terms are going to turn over. But like I say, having spent a year as a commissioner and watching commissioners disappear for very different reasons, it just feels like bureaucracy that we don't need.
I guess to answer your question directly, or perhaps not answer it, apologies, but you know, I think that's a question that could be asked and answered in any future election of the chair. That could be answered by, you know, the 2 other commissioners, whether they could serve for 5 or 6 years. You know, yeah, so I think that's my non-response, and sorry to not have a direct answer.
Well, I mean, just let me say, you know, I didn't invent the idea of a term limit. You know, that's been out there for quite a while and is widely employed, and I think it's used to prevent problems. And, you know, I personally would have a problem with the same person, whoever it was, serving 4, 5, or 6 years as chair. And so preference would be to say that I would like us to institute that, and I would propose that we adopt this resolution, striking the first five paragraphs of the decretal section and retaining only number 6.
For clarity, is that a motion?
That is a motion.
Do we have a second? So motion dies for lack of a second. The next item is election of chair. I'll go ahead and start. And I'm still where I was at 2 weeks ago. I think we've got some good momentum going. I've invested quite a bit in trying to do this job pretty well, and would be honored to serve again for another year. I've very much heard your things. So there will be at least an election a year from now. And then having said that, I also accept that whatever the three of us decide to do is the right answer. So putting myself forward as potential chair.
Yeah, and I appreciate having heard the considerations that the both of you put into thinking about this. Just in general, I agree with the spirit of what Commissioner Ellison is seeking to implement. And I think it's good. At the same time, I also agree with the benefits to the industry having certainty and staff having certainty, and the benefits of continuity from having the leadership of the agency not change, every year, or maybe even every 2 years. So I think, so that's my discussion for right now. I'm happy to make a motion as well, but leaving it open to see if there's any other discussion.
Mr. Ellison, do you have any thoughts on this item?
Not at this time.
Okay, well, I think given that, I will move to re-elect Chair O'Connell for another year as chairman of the PRC.
Thank you. I'll second that motion.
Commissioner Ellison,
Abstain.
Commissioner O'Connell,
Yes.
Commissioner Aguilera.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, the motion to have you serve as chair for a second year passes by a vote of 2 yes and 1 abstention.
Great, thank you. Okay, so next agenda item is legislation discussion, and we've got a presentation from Colin Gillespie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. I understand that we're very short on time with a 2 p.m. deadline. I'm prepared to speak quickly, and I'm caffeinated commensurately. I won't go into detail on the HAPC meeting, the House Appropriations Committee meeting last week, but several representatives in that committee did express a desire to increase funding for our agency above the LFC recommendation. I do need to note that House Appropriations is meeting today. It's scheduled for 1:30, but it should be at the call of the chair fairly shortly in room 307. That's a full committee hearing on specials, supplementals, and deficiencies appropriations. IT appropriations are also on that agenda. Our Chief of Staff, Troy Corey, has already headed over there, and I will be attending as well after this update. In terms of our FIR process, we've only received 3 requests so far. I should make that 4. We just got another request in 20 minutes ago. I'm anticipating a large crunch on FIR requests coming very soon. We're 9 days into the 30-day session. The deadline for introduction is the end of the month, January 31st, and the session ends on February 15th. For bill updates, I'm going to be discussing I'm tracking about 40 bills. I'm only going to discuss about 10 of them today, rapid fire. Some of these are fairly new and they haven't been uploaded into Board Effect yet, but they are available on the tracker via SharePoint. I want to note that for all of these bills, or any bill in general, commissioners may choose to elevate legislation for a policy position. This would only take place in an open meeting, either a regular open meeting or a special open meeting. As we only have 21 days left in the session, and we wouldn't be scheduled for another open meeting until February 8th, we may want to consider a special open meeting if commissioners would like to take a policy position on legislation. Bills that have a high impact on the agency would be most ripe for this type of discussion and potential action. And in terms of process, I would ask the commissioners just send me an email, and from there we can decide on when that would occur. I'll be sharing the newest bill tracker information via email and SharePoint this afternoon, along with copies of the discussed legislation. And please reach out to me with any questions or concerns on any legislation listed or unlisted. In terms of those policy options, we have 4. First is to support the legislation. The commission could authorize a representative of the PRC to appear in committee hearings and formally stand in support. The commission could also authorize the sponsors of the bill to inform committees that if the bill is passed, it is implementable from the agency's perspective. That's more of a neutral recommendation. And then the commission could also come out in opposition to legislation and authorize a representative to stand at committee hearings and speak in opposition to bills. And the last option is, of course, take no position or don't vote. I'm going to jump into highlighted legislation now. Like I said, I'm tracking 40 bills. First up to discuss today, solar market development tax credit changes. This is brought by Senator and Pro Tem Mimi Stewart. It's Senate Bill 121. It's been assigned to Senate Tax and Senate Finance Committee. The purpose of the solar market development income tax credit is to encourage installation of solar thermal and photovoltaic systems in residences, businesses, and agricultural enterprises. This bill would increase the annual aggregate amount of credits that may be certified in certain years. I'm going to skip the detail there on those numbers unless there's a question from the commission. I'm also tracking the Low Income Solar Act, sponsored by Representative Ortez. This has a companion bill on the Senate side, that's SB 2 with Senator Hamblin. It's currently in the Senate Committees Committee. Thereafter, it's assigned to Senate Conservation and Senate Tax. Has not been printed or assigned as of yet, still in the House Rules Committee, but it applies to utilities and it would require equitable distribution of benefits of on-site solar generated energy, which is generated on affordable housing units. And it would restrict some utility fees for solar on affordable housing. There are some concerns from staff about incentives for installation of these systems. Next, we have HB 40. That's the Clean Car Income Tax Credit, sponsored by Hockman, Vigil, and Corolla. It received a due pass in Henrik yesterday, and it's up next in House Tax and Rev. It creates 2 new refundable personal and corporate income tax credits for a 6-year period, beginning in 2024 through tax year 2029. It creates a refundable electric vehicle income tax credit for each electrical EV purchase. And it also creates an incentive for charging units. And that applies to both new EVs and previously owned EVs. I'm also tracking the energy storage facility IRB eligibility bill. That's House Bill 143, sponsored by Representative Chandler. It's assigned to House Energy, but it's unscheduled, and thereafter it will go to House Tax. That just amends the Industrial Revenue Bond Act to include certain electric energy storage facilities as eligible projects. Payment in lieu of taxes would go to school districts if the municipality or county acquires storage projects. It would provide a GRT deduction for sales of energy storage equipment to a government for the purpose of installing an energy storage facility. HB 73 is the Energy Storage System Income Tax Credit. Might be familiar with this one from last session, sponsored by Representatives Sariñana and Lujan. It received a due pass in House Energy and it's scheduled for House Tax and Rev tomorrow at 8:30 in room 317. It proposes a personal income tax credit of 40% of the cost of equipment and installation for a standalone energy storage system installed from March 2024 through the end of 2028. The credit for installation, it applies to residential, industrial, commercial, or agricultural property. It's limited to a maximum of $5,000 credit for residential system and $150,000 for commercial, industrial, or agricultural systems. I'm also tracking the Local Solar Access Fund. This is SB 108, sponsored by Senator Cesapinski and Caballero. It received a due pass in House Energy. It's on to House Appropriations. This bill appropriates $110 million from the general fund to MNERD. It establishes a new grant program in NMFA related to solar energy systems. Eligible entities may receive grants to plan, design, construct, purchase, install, and equip solar energy systems used to power buildings. Entities may also use grants for technical assistance with applying for federal funding. MNERD estimates that the appropriation could fund 1,500 to 2,000 projects of the size described in the Solar Market Development Tax Credit, which I previously mentioned is up for expansion under SB 121. I have 3 more bills to discuss. These are hot off the presses, just got introduced yesterday. First is transportation regulation. That's Senate Bill 201. It's currently in the Senate Committees Committee, thereafter Senate Tax and Senate Judiciary. Clarifies duties for the Department of Transportation related to regulation of railway companies, transportation network companies, and motor carriers, which applies to the PRC. It opens up the appeals process by opening up department decisions to oversight from the district court. It also updates definitions and other provisions of the Motor Carrier Act. Notably for PRC purposes, it changed the definition of taxi cab services. It removes the definition of taxi cab association and replaces it with taxi cab service. Another new bill is HB 237. We just received an FIR request for this bill 20 minutes ago. It's called the Climate, Energy, and Water Authority Act. It's sponsored by Dixon, Ortez, and Small. It would create the Climate, Energy, and Water Authority, which it would be attached to the Economic Development Department. It would establish a decarbonization program, and it would require the chair of the PRC or the chair's designee to participate on the 15-member board. The board would serve as a permitting navigator for climate, energy, and water projects, including identifying locations for projects, providing recommendations to the governor and the legislature for streamlining or permitting of projects. It would also be vested with rulemaking power, and it would establish guidelines and rules for programs and grants for clean energy, water, and energy conservation technology pilot and demonstration projects. the bill appropriates $10 million to a fund, and sorry, that's it for that one. The next bill is Senate Bill 200. This is Timber on Water System Improvements, sponsored by Griggs and Vincent. This is currently in the Senate Committees Committee, then it's on to Senate Conservation and Senate Finance. It appropriates $2.5 million from the general fund to the Environment Department through 2028 to plan, design, and construct water system improvements for Timber on Water and Sanitation District in Otero County. That is reverting. In terms of bills that we discussed last time, 2 weeks ago, the telecom and geothermal bills are proceeding through their committees. And last but not least, I want to discuss clean fuels, and that is HB 41. This bill, the PRC, we've been working with NMPRC to ensure that the clean fuels bill is implementable. It has transportation electrification implications. Essentially, the bill would incentivize transportation decarbonization through a market mechanism that I should say is distinguished from cap and trade. There's no cap in this bill, but it does create fungible credits for transportation fuel generation. I would note that PRC's current stance on this is that the bill is implementable. And I've been working with the sponsors to make sure that the legislation tracks our existing rules and regulations. The bill passed out of House Energy or received a due pass in House Energy, and it also just passed House Judiciary yesterday. So it is on for a House floor vote. And that concludes my presentation, and I stand for questions.
Yeah, thank you for that info. I guess I was confused. Were you asking for us to do anything here?
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, I serve at the pleasure of the commission, and if the commission would like certain recommendations, I'm happy to provide those. But this essentially, it's a commissioner decision whether or not any of these pieces of legislation will be brought up to take a policy stance. So I'm not recommending any specific course of action.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And then I guess just my view on this is if the legislature decides to implement any of these policies, can we implement them? And so that you hit on that with the clean fuel standard. So thank you for sending the current amendments. I agreed with whoever at the PRC made that assessment that is the amendment creates a situation where should the legislature pass that bill, we can and will do what the legislation requires. But so that's just an example, but broadly, it's kind of the way I would think about all these is if legislature wants to do that, can we implement it? I haven't seen any of these where the answer to that's no. So I guess my idea would be thank you for your presentation and move on. But do you have any questions, comments?
I certainly agree with that. You highlighted, Mr. Gillespie, the clean fuels bill. I'm not sure that we should take a stance on it. I personally haven't thoroughly looked at the liquid fuel side of it, but perhaps we might consider saying we don't see a problem with the implementation, and we think that it wouldn't pose a problem to the utilities, and for this one in particular, the clean fuels bill, it sounds like it could either add to the funding for the transportation electrification programs of the utilities, or it could reduce what customers are paying towards the transportation electrification program. In other words, that since electricity is considered a clean fuel, it would be a source of revenue for the utilities, but they would be bound to use that on these transportation electrification programs. There would certainly be no negative impact to the utilities, and there most likely would be a positive impact to the transportation electrification programs.
Mr. Aguilera.
Well, I appreciate the presentation. I would not be in a position to, decide to take a stance on any of this. To be honest, my brain is like 90% fried. I'm trying to save 10% of that for this next workshop, so.
Well, there is one exception to that. We might consider weighing in and saying Tiburon really needs help. That would be an area where we might consider.
No, I agree with that. And that's why, Mr. Gillespie, I was asking you if you were asking us for anything, because I know you're going to be in these committee rooms. I know they'll say, hey, you're PRC. What do you think about that? Did you need any more than, hey, we're willing, we're here to help. We've looked at these, they're implementable, and Tiburon needs help. Do you need more from us than that?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I think it would require a vote from the commission. And I think if we wanted to do that today, we would not be prohibited under the Open Meetings Act, subject to check from General Counsel. And if we want to do that today, we could.
I agree. I agree that they need help. I would just want to double check with our general counsel, because we did have this case and there was a directive for a compliance filing. And so just making sure with general counsel that from a legal perspective, there's no concern with that.
I think on that piece of legislation in particular, I would want to look into that before advising you on what decision to make on that. I also have a little bit of a concern of the taking action on any legislation that Mr. Gillespie was talking about in terms of how we've noticed it. So I would advise to wait.
Yeah, thank you for that. Kicking that one wide, right? That I think that also highlights just a weakness in our process, right? This Tiburon bill, you said you just got it. By the time we notice, talk about it, vote, session's over. So anyway, I think public statements will have to suffice for now.
Then, Mr. Chair, we could, as Mr. Gillespie suggested, we could always have a special open meeting to handle legislation that needs it.
So I guess that I'll propose we just leave it there. That thank you for the presentation. Go do my homework on this. If it looks like we need a meeting, and you can tell us that, hey, legislature is asking for more than you're giving. So please keep the communication coming.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners.
Thank you. So we have two more items on the agenda. One is communications with Chief of Staff. Chief of Staff has absconded to go to the legislature. And then that was a rulemaking process update, and I viewed that item as time permitting anyway. So I will propose that we dispense with that item. And then communications with commissioners would. I feel like this has been a very, again, rich, fruitful meeting, lots of communication. A second Commissioner Aguilera's a motion of being mostly brain used up, so I don't have any communications. Give everybody opportunity.
I'm communicated out today.
Yeah, that's the way to put it.
Okay, would you like 3 or 8 minutes to start our next workshop?
I could use 8. But I mean, I realize that means we're starting the train 5 minutes late and that there's interest in this workshop, but
Let's do 8.
all right, so I'm gonna move that we're adjourned. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Do I voice vote for